Welcome everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about Pokémon Legends Z-A and how it's taking place entirely within Lumiose City from the Kalos region, and how I think it might be entirely open world. Is this a certainty? No, it's a theory, a discussion I would like to have because I think it's interesting, and it may come with some implications for the gameplay of Pokémon Legends Z-A. And so that's what I would like to talk about today. But before going forward, let me point out that we are currently aiming for a goal of 40,000 subscribers, so if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and enjoy the ride as we attempt to talk about Nintendo every day. So the one thing that's clear about Pokémon Legends Z-A so far is that it is taking place within Lumiose City. It's been said in various ways on different channels and social media sites from Nintendo and Pokémon Company that this is the case. And this direction is a bit of a head scratcher for many, and for myself at first as well. Because when you take a look at the first Pokémon Legends game, it takes place across the entire region of Sinnoh, or Sinnoh in the past, Hisui. And so the way the game is structured, you have this initial area that you explore the beach, which leads into the city, Jubilife City, or town, because it wasn't a city back then. And this is kind of like the hub area that you can explore and do different side quests and things of this nature. It builds up over the course of the game. More and more people become acquainted with Pokemon, and you see this marriage between people and Pokemon that is continually built upon, which is the whole point of Legends games. They take place before this connection between Pokemon and people were as established. But then there are these 5 other provinces or areas you can explore that are these pretty sizable, fairly open sandboxes. Very similar to a Monster Hunter game. And admittedly, this could be the same exact structure they follow in Pokémon Legends Z-A. Because when we take a look at the map of the city of Lumiose City, be it the old version of the map or the new version of the map, the blueprint for what I think they want to develop the city into someday, you'll notice that it's basically cut into 5 different sections. And then of course there's the middle area where we see the tower, where the bulk of the game may be taking place. But the point I'm getting at here is that when we take a look at the map, it is conceivable that maybe the middle area is the area that's kind of like the hub area, very similar to the town we explore in Legends Arceus. But these 5 different sort of slices of the pie are the equivalent to the big provinces we explored in Legends Arceus. And so maybe they could follow a structure like that. But when I think about it, if this is all meant to be one big city, and we're in this hub area, and we're literally right there next to this area where there's a whole bunch of other cities to explore. If we're not able to go from one point to another, that would be kind of odd. I think it would be weird to be in this one slice of the pie, and then wanting to go to the one right to my left, and I can't. I have to go back to the hub area or fast travel to it, even though it's right there in front of me. You see, at least with Legends Arceus, while it was segmented, there was an implied distance between the areas, and so it made some sense to have a loading screen in between. Because this is all within a city, one big area, I'm not sure that direction would work as well. And so that leads me to believe that maybe this is going to be more of an open world. Maybe something kind of like Spider-Man, for example. It's not meant to be the biggest open world ever, but it is a sizable area that is dense with things to do. Now, I'm already operating under the assumption that this game takes place in the past. It's possible that it doesn't. But when they talk about a redevelopment plan and how they're trying to build up this connection between Pokemon and people, it sounds like pretty much before these things were established. And so my perspective is that as the game progresses, somewhat similar to Legends Arceus, but on a bigger scale, there's going to be a simple town with a lot of undeveloped areas, perhaps even some wild areas where we can see a lot of wild Pokemon and alpha Pokemon, things of that nature, and over time the connection builds and the city or town advances. But what I think is kind of neat about this idea is that we could be looking at a game where we see more of an evolution of the area we are exploring. We see more of a focus on this building of the connection between people and Pokemon. And that could be pretty cool to see, especially if this is a smaller open world. Still open world, but just very dense with content and rich gameplay experiences. And I actually have more reason to think that this is the direction they're going in here. Because let's take a look at the direction Game Freak has been heading with their different Pokemon games. You think about the jump we saw when we played Pokemon Sun and Moon, the final generation on Nintendo 3DS. how it started to look more like a typical third-person action-adventure game. And then with Pokemon Sword and Shield even more so, but they also had these areas, the wild areas, where it was an open exploration segment of the game. And then the DLC for Sword and Shield had these as well, these open areas to explore. Then after that we get Legends Arceus, where the areas were even bigger and more vast, but still not open world. But then with the latest generation of Pokemon, Scarlet and Violet, it was made into a full open world game. And then we take a look at the DLC, our adventures in Kitakami and then also the Indigo Disc. I really enjoyed the DLC adventures, and the way they were sort of structured I would like to somewhat see in this Legends game, in the sense that they are these open areas that are not as vast as the main game of Scarlet and Violet, but there's an engaging story with the characters that builds naturally as you explore the world. And focusing specifically on the Indigo Disc, that terrarium with the 4 different biomes, that almost feels like a blueprint for what could be this game. It's a giant round area with different sections that you can explore, but it's still one whole large open area that you navigate through. And so I could see that format essentially being used and built upon with Legends Z-A. It's this big round area with these 5 different sections that you can navigate through, except it's a city as opposed to a bunch of wild areas. Now, as I brought up earlier, I still expect there to be some wild areas because this is a Pokemon game where we're going to catch Pokemon, I would assume. But because this may be set in the past, where not the entire city has been established yet, there may be just some natural wild areas. But even thinking back to Lumiose City from X and Y, there were parks that had some natural looking parts, so they could expand on this as well. So it's not going to be a total, oh, it's all just city advanced stuff. I think there's going to be more of a blend. And perhaps what I find most interesting about this idea of exploring an open city environment is that this might be Game Freak kind of going back to something we felt like we lost with the recent generation. So in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and even in the DLC, when we did see other houses and stuff, you can't go in them. I felt like the environments, while vaster than prior Pokemon games and more open and flexible with how you can explore them, there was less density. Not being able to go into these houses and talk to the people or finding certain items in there takes away a little bit of the flair that I used to enjoy from prior Pokemon games. And so with Legends Z-A, I have this optimism that because they are focusing on a singular city and perhaps trying to make the content more dense and rich, that it's not just about moving around on the outside, but exploring the actual town and city as it develops. In other words, going back inside the houses, more of a focus on talking to the characters and the connections and the side quests and little clues and pieces of lore. There's a lot of potential here from this perspective. And I just want to speak on this point just for a little bit more, because there is this growing conversation that a little bit of the magic of Pokemon has been lost over the last few generations. And something that I think is worth noting is that when we look back to the Mother series, Earthbound, the creators of that series were also the initial creators of the first Pokemon game, and so there's always been a little bit of that DNA, and we're starting to see that charm dissipate. I would like to see them find a way to come back to it. So I'm personally thinking that it would be kind of shocking, actually, if that we explore Legends Z-A, and they have all these buildings all around us, and we can only go into a select few of them. This city is the entire focus of the game. It's everything that we explore. It's not an entire vast region. There won't be as many excuses here. And if this is indeed the direction they're going in, I would find this to be a breath of fresh air. Listen, I love open world exploration games, but it feels like this kind of follow-up to what Breath of the Wild started, where you have this big world with sprawling hills with tons of blades of grass sticking out. A whole bunch of games have been doing that over the last 7 years, and while I love that, and I still want to see more of that, it would be nice to see a little bit more of a balance here. And so having a really well-realized, open-world Lumiose City to explore Legends Z-A, I think that's going to be pretty fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing more on this game. But what do you all think? Do you think we're going to be exploring an open-world Lumiose City in Pokemon Legends Z-A? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.